I need a husband by tomorrow. She paid a stranger to marry her, unaware he was the Alpha King. The city lay under a thick blanket of fog, the cobblestone streets slick with the memory of last night's rain. Lanterns flickered weakly, their golden light struggling against the gray mist. From the distance, the silhouette of the city palace loomed like a dark sentinel, its spires clawing at the low-hanging clouds. Among the shadows, a young woman hurried, clutching a small pouch of coins close to her chest. Her name was Leora, and every step she took carried the weight of desperation. Her home, once lively and full of warmth, had become a cage of worry. Her father's debts had grown into mountains she could not climb. If she did not marry by tomorrow, the law would strip their family of everything. Her younger siblings, bright-eyed, innocent, looked to her as if she were their only shield against ruin. She could not fail them. Not now. Leora's mind raced as she approached the narrow alleyway where the marriage brokers were said to operate. It was a place whispered about in the markets and taverns, a place ordinary people feared, where the wealthy or desperate could make arrangements with strangers overnight. She swallowed her fear and stepped into the dimly lit doorway. Inside, the air was thick with candle smoke, dust, and the faint scent of perfume too strong for comfort. Shadows moved along the walls, shapes of men and women whose eyes glittered with curiosity and calculation. One of them, a woman draped in deep purple silk, stepped forward. "You seek a husband," she said, her voice smooth as silk yet sharp as a dagger. "Tonight, tomorrow, or perhaps at dawn." "Yes," Leora replied, her voice trembling slightly. "By tomorrow it must be done. I have no choice." The broker raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She gestured to a corner of the room where a tall man stood in shadow. His posture was straight, commanding, and yet he seemed almost unreal, like he did not belong in the same world as the trembling, desperate people around him. Leora's eyes widened, but she forced herself to stay calm. "This one," the broker said, "he can marry you by tomorrow, but beware. Such services come at a price." Leora's heart pounded. "I have the payment," she said, opening her pouch of coins. They were all she had saved, every coin she had hidden from her family for emergencies. "Take it, please." The man stepped forward then, emerging fully into the candlelight. He was unlike any man she had ever seen. His hair was black as midnight, his eyes deep and unreadable, yet they seemed to peer straight into her thoughts. He did not smile. He did not speak. He simply regarded her with an intensity that made her stomach twist. "You understand," he said finally, his voice low and steady, "that once this is done, it cannot be undone." "I understand," Leora said, swallowing hard. I have no choice." Without another word, he reached out his hand. Leora hesitated for only a moment before placing hers in his. The touch was cold, but not unkind, more like the chill of a winter wind that wakes every nerve in your body. The broker began the ceremony, muttering words in a language that seemed older than the city itself. Candles flared, their flames bending as if moved by invisible hands. Leora felt a shiver run down her spine, not from fear alone, but from the sense that the world had shifted around her. When it was done, the broker placed two simple rings on their fingers. Leora looked at the man, expecting nothing but cold indifference. He raised his eyes to hers, and for the first time she heard him speak clearly. "I am Kalen," he said, and his tone was calm, yet filled with authority. "The Alpha King." Leora froze. The words echoed in her mind like a thunderclap. The Alpha King. She had heard the legends, tales of a ruler who commanded not only men, but creatures that walked between shadow and reality, a man whose very presence could bend the will of kingdoms. She had married a stranger. She had married him, her throat tightened. You are the Alpha King," she whispered, disbelief and fear mingling in her voice. He nodded slightly. "Yes, and now you are my wife." The fog outside seemed to press against the chapel walls as if the world itself were holding its breath. Leora's heart raced, a storm of fear, awe, and something else she could not yet name. She had wanted to save her family to secure their future, but she had never imagined it would cost her the unknown, her life entwined with a king whose power could crush her in an instant. Kaelin's gaze remained steady, measuring her, reading her like a book. There was no malice in his eyes, but there was also no warmth, only awareness, a dangerous awareness that made her skin tingle. "You should know," Kaelin said after a pause, "I do not forgive easily and I do not trust quickly. Our union will be challenging." "I can handle it," Leora said, though her voice shook slightly. "I have to." A faint smile, almost imperceptible, tugged at the corner of his lips. "We shall see," he said. As they left the chapel, the city fog seemed thicker, darker. The streets were empty, silent, as if the world itself were wary of the Alpha King and his new bride. Leora followed Kaelin without a word, every step echoing in the quiet night. The castle gates opened before them like the jaws of some great beast. Inside, the walls were lined with torches that cast long, flickering shadows. The air smelled faintly of herbs and stone, ancient and alive. Leora's eyes wandered, drinking in the vast halls and the intricate tapestries that told stories of battles, victories, and sacrifices long forgotten. Kaelin walked ahead of her, his presence a constant reminder of the power she had stepped into. She felt small, fragile, yet there was a spark inside her, a stubborn flame that refused to be snuffed out by fear. "Your chambers are ready," he said, his voice carrying authority. "Rest. Tomorrow, the reality of this kingdom and your new life will begin." Leora nodded, though she barely heard his words. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, fears, and a strange, undeniable curiosity. What was it like to be the Alpha King? What secrets did he hold? And most importantly, what did he truly think of her? That night, as she lay on the soft, cold sheets of her chamber, Leora stared at the ceiling, listening to the distant echoes of the castle. Footsteps, whispers, the occasional growl that she told herself was the wind. Her heart was heavy with the weight of what she had done, but also with the thrilling, terrifying thought that she had stepped into a world far larger than she had ever imagined. Outside her window, the moon cast silver light over the castle gardens, and in the shadows, Kaelin watched silently. He did not sleep. He watched her, not with desire but with calculation. He could sense her courage, her intelligence, her determination. She was not like the others who had crossed his path. She would not bow, not completely. And that intrigued him. The night stretched on, long and unbroken, until the first pale rays of dawn touched the chapel where they had been married. A new day began, and with it, a reality neither of them could deny. Leora's life was no longer her own. She was the wife of the Alpha King, bound by vows she barely understood. Kaelin entered her chamber at sunrise, his presence filling the room like shadow and light combined. Leora rose from the bed, heart hammering. She tried to appear composed, but she knew she had failed. "You survived the night," he said, his voice even calm. Yet behind the calm was a current of power that made her stomach twist. I did," she whispered. "Good," he said. "Tomorrow the kingdom will see us as husband and wife. And I expect you to understand one thing clearly. I do not tolerate lies, weakness, or deceit. Do you understand?" Leora nodded, though the words struck her like ice. "I understand." Kaelin's gaze softened just for a heartbeat. "Remember," he said, stepping back, "you are not just a wife now. You are part of a world that will challenge everything you know. Survive it, and perhaps we will see what becomes of us." Leora swallowed hard. She had married a stranger. She had married the Alpha King. And the castle, with all its shadows, secrets, and dangers, was now her home. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark of courage flickered. She would not be broken. She would not be tamed. And she would face whatever this new world had in store. Because tomorrow, her life and her destiny would truly begin. Cliffhanger. As the sun rose over the city, Leora's eyes met Kaelin's across the chamber. In that silent moment, the truth hung between them like a storm waiting to break. She had married a king she did not know, and he had married a woman he did not yet trust. And in that fragile trust, danger, power, and something far more forbidden, something neither of them could yet name, was already taking root. The castle of the Alpha King rose like a living mountain against the pale morning sky, its stone walls dark and strong, ivy curling along. Towers that seemed to touch the clouds. Leora walked carefully through the wide halls, each echo of her footsteps reminding her that she was a stranger in a place of shadows and power. Every corner seemed alive, as though the walls themselves were watching, listening. Her husband, her king, moved silently beside her, Kaelin's presence commanding the space in a way that made everyone they passed bow, kneel, or avert their gaze. His dark eyes flicked over her occasionally, noting her careful steps, her nervous glances. It unsettled her that she felt seen in a way no one else had ever noticed her. "You must understand," Kaelin said, his voice low but carrying authority. "This castle has rules. Every servant, every guard, every advisor is aware of them. One misstep, one wrong word, and consequences follow." Leora nodded, keeping her head high even though her hands trembled slightly. "I understand," she said. "I will be careful." Kaelin's lips pressed into a thin line. "Careful does not impress me," he said. "Cleverness and courage, those impress me." Leora's pulse quickened. Courage, cleverness. She had acted recklessly to secure her family's safety, but it seemed he had noticed the spark she had hidden so carefully from the world. Their first stop was the great hall, where sunlight spilled through towering stained-glass windows. The hall was empty, but the echoes of past ceremonies seemed to linger. Kaelin's footsteps were silent, controlled, and yet each one seemed to leave a mark in the room, as though even the air acknowledged his authority. "You will meet the council today," he said. "They manage the affairs of the kingdom, both human and supernatural. They will test you. They will question your loyalty, your intentions, and your wisdom. You must not appear weak, Leora. Weakness invites danger." Her heart skipped a beat. Tests, danger. She had hoped that marriage would be enough to protect her family, yet she realized now that stepping into Kaelin's world was like stepping into a forest of shadows where any wrong turn could be fatal. "Why would I test you?" Kaelin added, seeing the question in her eyes. "Because you are my wife, and because even kings need to know if their companions can survive in a world that will not forgive mistakes." They walked in silence for a time, the castle's corridors stretching endlessly. Statues of past kings and queens lined the walls, their stony faces frozen in expressions of judgment. Leora wondered if those who had walked these halls before had felt the same mixture of awe and fear. When they reached the council chambers, the doors opened, revealing a long room filled with people whose gazes fell immediately upon Leora. Men and women dressed in dark, elegant robes, their expressions carefully neutral, their eyes sharp and assessing. Some were human, others bore subtle signs of the supernatural, slight glows in their eyes, faint marks along their wrists that pulsed like veins of light. Kaelin's hand lightly brushed her back, guiding her forward. She felt the warmth of him, the silent strength that seemed to radiate from his very presence. She drew a steadying breath and stepped forward, standing tall even though her heart raced. "Your Majesty," one of the council members began, a woman with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, "we welcome the new queen. Your arrival, unexpected though it may be, will be noted. We must discuss your understanding of the kingdom's rules and your readiness to serve." Leora nodded, speaking carefully. "I may be new to this world, but I have learned to think quickly, to act with intention. I intend to serve my family, my husband, and the kingdom to the best of my ability." A murmur ran through the council, but none spoke further. Kaelin's eyes lingered on her, and she felt the weight of his gaze as though it were both shield and test. She realized that in this castle, trust was earned in small, careful steps, and every word, every glance, could tilt the balance between safety and danger. After the council meeting, Kaelin led Leora through the gardens. Though the castle walls were thick and dark, The gardens were alive, flowers that glowed faintly even in daylight, trees with leaves that whispered when the wind passed. It was a place of beauty and quiet power, a reminder that this world was not solely governed by fear and authority. "Do not think this castle is only stone and rules," Kalen said quietly. "Every corner, every shadow, every creature here has a purpose. You must learn to see beyond what is visible. Only then will you understand the kingdom and me." Leora's eyes followed him, tracing the lines of his face, the strength in his posture. "I will try," she said softly. "I want to understand. I want to help." Kalen studied her, his expression unreadable. "Few do," he said. "Most see only the power or the fear it inspires. You see something else. That is rare." For a moment the distance between them seemed to shrink. Leora felt a strange warmth, a glimmer of hope in the cold halls of the castle. Yet she knew she could not mistake it for friendship or trust. In Kalen's world, even admiration could be dangerous. That evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the castle, a messenger arrived. He brought a small, sealed note, carried in trembling hands. Kalen broke the seal and read silently. His expression remained calm, yet his dark eyes flicked to Leora with something unreadable. "It seems," he said slowly, "someone in the court believes they can use you against me." Leora's stomach dropped. "Use me?" she whispered. Kalen's gaze hardened. "Yes. Someone has learned of your marriage. They see you as a tool, a weakness, a way to undermine my authority. You must be careful." Fear surged through her, but she swallowed it, determined not to show weakness. "What should I do?" she asked. "You must observe, listen. Learn who can be trusted and who cannot," Kalen said. "I will protect you when I can, but there are limits even I cannot cross. Trust is a weapon, and you must wield it wisely." The night grew darker, and the castle seemed to close in around her. Leora returned to her chambers, her mind racing. She had entered this world to save her family, but now she realized she had stepped into a realm of secrets and shadows far deeper than she could have imagined. She was married to a king, yes, but a king whose enemies were everywhere, whose world moved like a shadow at dusk. Hours passed and she thought of Kalen. His presence haunted her thoughts, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and an emotion she could not name. He was a stranger, and yet he had saved her family's future. He was a ruler feared by all, yet he had glanced at her with something. Interest? Respect? She could not be sure. A sudden sound drew her attention, a soft step outside her door. She froze. The corridor was empty when she opened it, but a faint shadow moved near the far end, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Leora's heart pounded. The castle was alive with secrets, and some of those secrets might threaten her life before morning. The next day, Kalen called her to walk with him along the castle battlements. The wind was sharp, carrying the scent of distant forests and stone. The city stretched below, unaware of the struggles and dangers hidden in the shadows of the royal palace. "You must understand something," Kalen said, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "This kingdom is not kind. It rewards strength, cleverness, and loyalty. It punishes weakness, indecision, and deceit. I see strength in you, Leora. But you will need more than courage to survive here." Leora lifted her chin, her chest rising with determination. "Then I will learn," she said. "I will be clever. I will be strong. I will protect my family and you." Kalen's eyes softened just slightly. "You speak boldly," he said. "Few would dare speak like that to the Alpha King. Yet you do not fear me entirely. That is rare." A moment passed between them, silent yet charged with unspoken tension. Leora realized she was no longer just a desperate girl trying to save her family. She was a queen now, stepping into a world that demanded cunning, courage, and heart. And beside her walked a man she barely understood, powerful, unreadable, yet undeniably magnetic. The day ended with a message from the council, a warning hidden in careful words. "Trust is not given freely. Even allies may betray you." Leora felt the weight of it pressing down, a reminder that every step she took could be watched, every word noted, every action judged. As night fell again, she stood by her window looking out at the moonlit gardens. The shadows seemed to shift, alive with secrets and silent movement. Kaelin's words echoed in her mind, "Trust is a weapon. Wield it wisely." And she knew, deep in her heart, that the real tests had only just begun. Cliffhanger. In the dark of the castle, unseen eyes watched Leora. Someone in Kaelin's court was plotting. And when the trap was revealed, she would have to decide: warn the king and risk herself, or stay silent and let the shadows decide their fate. The castle of the Alpha King had never felt smaller, nor more suffocating than it did now. Leora moved quietly through its corridors, careful with every step. She had learned quickly that the castle was alive, not with magic alone, though there was plenty of that, but with eyes that watched and ears that listened. Every whispered word could travel far, every careless gesture could spark suspicion. Yet, despite the danger, her heart was brimming with determination. She had survived the first days, navigated the council's tests, and faced Kaelin's silent scrutiny. Now she was ready for what she feared most, proving herself in the eyes of the court, and perhaps in the eyes of her husband. Kaelin appeared in the hallways without warning, his presence as commanding as ever. His black cloak swirled like a shadow around him, and his eyes, dark as storm clouds, studied her with a mix of caution and interest. "Today, you will face your first real trial," he said, his voice steady and unyielding. "The council suspects a plot against me. Someone intends to use you as leverage. You must uncover it before it is too late." Leora's breath caught. She had feared this moment, the moment when the danger would become personal. Yet beneath her fear was a spark of resolve. She would not fail. Not now, not ever. "How will I find them?" she asked. Kaelin's expression softened, though only slightly. "Use your eyes. Listen with more than your ears. The court is clever, but they are not infallible, and I will not interfere unless it becomes necessary. This is your test as much as it is theirs." Leora swallowed, nodding. She knew she could not rely solely on courage. She would need wit, intuition, and a keen understanding of the people around her. She would need to become invisible in the shadowy halls of power, yet sharp enough to catch the first sign of betrayal. The first clue came sooner than expected. During breakfast, a seemingly innocent comment from one of the council members caught her attention. "Your husband trusts easily," the man said, his tone polite but with a hidden edge. "It is remarkable and dangerous." Leora's mind raced. Who was he really speaking about? Was it Kaelin's trust in her, or a warning about herself? She kept her expression neutral, sipping her tea as she studied the man. There was something in the way he avoided her gaze, a tension that spoke of secrets better left hidden, or revealed at the wrong moment. As the day wore on, Leora moved carefully through the castle, observing everything: the flicker of torchlight against walls, the quiet murmurs of servants, the subtle gestures of courtiers who believed themselves unseen. She noticed patterns, small inconsistencies that hinted at hidden agendas. One of the attendants, a young man with nervous hands and darting eyes, seemed unusually attentive to her movements. That evening, Kaelin summoned her to the training courtyard, a vast space lined with stone and shadowed by towers. The moon hung high, casting silver light over the ground. Soldiers and guards moved silently around them, their weapons glinting faintly. "This will test your courage," Kaelin said, "and your trust." Before Leora could respond, a sudden sound rang out, a sharp metallic clang followed by movement in the shadows. Figures emerged from the darkness, cloaked and masked, their intent clear in the way they advanced. Leora's heart raced, but she did not retreat. She had to prove herself, not only to the council, not only to Kaelin, but to herself. Kaelin moved to her side, his presence both shield and warning. Together they faced the figures, their movements precise and synchronized. Leora was quick, thinking ahead, anticipating each step, each motion. She realized that Kalen was not merely testing her physical abilities. He was testing her mind, her instincts, her capacity to act under pressure. The battle, though brief, left her breathless. The cloaked attackers vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind only the faint scent of smoke and the echo of their footsteps. Leora's hands trembled, but her mind was sharp, alert. She had survived, not alone but with Kalen by her side, a man whose presence was as frightening as it was comforting. "You did well," Kalen said quietly, his voice a mix of approval and something else she could not name. Few would have reacted so quickly, so decisively. Leora met his gaze, unsure how to interpret the rare praise. She had always relied on her wits, but never had her courage been tested in such a direct, dangerous way. The bond between them, unspoken, fragile, yet undeniable, had shifted. She was no longer merely a pawn in a dangerous game. She was beginning to claim her place as a partner. Yet the night was far from over. As they walked back through the castle, Leora's sharp eyes caught a movement near the library, a shadow that seemed to linger longer than it should. She paused, hand brushing against the stone wall, listening. Kalen noticed. "What is it?" "There's someone," she whispered. "Near the library, watching." His eyes narrowed and he moved silently toward the shadow. Leora followed, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear. They rounded a corner, and a figure darted through the doorway of the library. Without thinking, Leora followed, her instincts guiding her steps. Inside, the room was dimly lit by flickering candles. Shelves of ancient books lined the walls, their spines worn and faded. The figure crouched behind a table, clutching a folded piece of parchment. Leora stepped forward, her voice steady. "Who are you?" she demanded. The figure froze, then slowly raised their hands in surrender. It was the nervous attendant she had noticed earlier. I meant no harm," he stammered. "I only wanted information." Kalen's presence filled the room, silent and commanding. Leora realized she had never seen him this still, this dangerous. "Information." Kalen's voice was a low growl. The attendant swallowed, nodding. "Yes, about the council, about threats to your throne." "I thought I could help." Leora studied him carefully. His intentions were uncertain, his loyalty unclear. Yet there was fear in his eyes, a genuine fear that suggested he was more scared of the consequences than willing to betray. "You must be careful," Leora said softly, surprising even herself with her calm tone. "The wrong move here could cost more than you think. Trust is a weapon, yes, but wielded wrong, it can cut deeper than a sword." The attendant nodded quickly, trembling. I understand," he whispered. Kalen remained silent, his gaze fixed on Leora. She felt the weight of his eyes like a tangible force, measuring her words, her intentions, her very soul. In that moment she realized how far she had come. She was no longer simply reacting. She was leading, guiding, influencing. The castle, the court, even Kalen himself, they were beginning to acknowledge her presence. Later that night, as the moon bathed the castle in silver light, Leora found herself on the balcony, gazing out over the city below. Kalen joined her silently, his cloak brushing the stone. The night was still, almost peaceful, yet charged with the tension of unspoken words. "You did well today," Kalen said finally. "You are cleverer than I first thought, and brave. That combination is rare." Leora's cheeks warmed at the compliment. "I learned from necessity," she said softly, "and from observing you." Kalen's eyes darkened, a flicker of emotion passing over his face. "Be careful," he said. "Observing is different from understanding. You may see actions, but not always intentions. You must learn to read both." Their hands brushed, an accidental contact that lingered longer than either expected. A spark ignited, a silent recognition of connection, trust, and something deeper, something neither of them yet dared to name. The night air was heavy with tension and possibility. Leora realized that in this world of shadows, intrigue, and unseen dangers, she had found not only her strength but also the first hints of her heart's desire. She was beginning to understand Kaelin, not fully, but enough to know that their bond was growing, fragile yet undeniable, like a delicate flame in the dark. Cliffhanger. As the first light of dawn touched the castle towers, a shadow moved silently in the corridors below. Someone in the court had been watching, waiting, and plotting. Leora's courage, Kaelin's vigilance, and the fragile trust they had built would soon be tested in a way neither of them could anticipate. And when the trap was finally revealed, they would discover that even in a kingdom ruled by shadows, love and loyalty could be the sharpest weapons of all. The castle was unusually silent that morning. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, carrying an uneasy stillness through the stone halls. Leora moved quickly but carefully, her senses alert to every flicker of shadow, every whisper of movement. She had learned much in the days since her marriage, about the castle, the court, and most importantly, about Kaelin. She had learned that courage alone would not be enough. Understanding, trust, and instinct were equally vital. Kaelin was already in the great hall when she arrived, standing tall, his dark cloak brushing the floor, his gaze fixed on the city beyond the windows. The morning light framed him like a painting, powerful, commanding, yet impossibly alone. When he turned, his eyes met hers, and for a moment the castle seemed to shrink around them, leaving only the two of them in a world of shadows and possibility. "They have moved," Kaelin said, his voice steady but tight with tension. "The council member plotting against me has gathered allies. They believe they can strike at dawn, using you as leverage. You must be ready." Leora's heart tightened. She had feared this day, the moment when danger would no longer hide in whispers and shadows. She nodded. "I'm ready," she said, though she knew that courage alone would not suffice. Kaelin approached her, his eyes searching hers. "Do you trust me?" he asked quietly. Leora hesitated, thinking of the past days, the tests, the councils, the shadows she had faced alone and together with him. "Yes," she said finally, "I trust you and I will follow you." He nodded, a rare softness in his expression. "Then we will face them together. You must stay close, act swiftly, and remember, trust is our greatest weapon." The first signs of the betrayal appeared soon after. Servants whispered, doors opened and closed in ways that hinted at secret meetings. Leora moved with Kaelin through the halls, silent and alert. She noticed small clues, the flicker of candlelight behind a tapestry, the nervous glance of an advisor, the subtle gestures that gave away intentions. Finally, in the armory, the council conspirators made their move. Masks covered their faces and weapons gleamed faintly in the torchlight. Leora's pulse raced, but her mind was clear. She had learned to read shadows, to anticipate movement, to act without hesitation. Kaelin stood beside her, a living wall of strength, but he did not act until the moment demanded. The conspirators lunged, expecting surprise, expecting fear, but found only precision. Leora moved first, knocking one to the ground with a quick, calculated strike. Kaelin followed, his power flowing through every controlled motion, incapacitating opponents without unnecessary force. In the chaos, Leora caught a glimpse of the council member, the mastermind behind the plot, slipping toward the exit. Without thinking, she sprinted, intercepting him with speed and determination that surprised even herself. "Stop!" she shouted, standing firmly in his path. "This ends now." The man hesitated, fear flashing in his eyes as Kaelin appeared behind her, calm and commanding. There was no anger in Kaelin's gaze, only authority and the silent promise of justice. "You underestimated her," Kaelin said softly, almost to himself, and then louder. "Your treachery ends here." The conspirators surrendered quickly, recognizing the futility of fighting both the Alpha King and his clever, determined wife. Leora's chest heaved, adrenaline surging, but there was also a deep sense of triumph. She had faced danger, protected Kaelin, and proven herself not only to the court but to herself. When the last of the conspirators was secured, Kaelin turned to her, his dark eyes unreadable for a moment before softening. "You were remarkable," he said quietly. I underestimated you." Leora felt warmth rise in her chest. "I only did what I had to," she said softly. "For my family and for you." Kaelin stepped closer, the air between them charged, heavy with unspoken emotions. For a moment the walls, the shadows, the dangers of the castle seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch deliberate yet gentle. "You are no longer merely my wife," he said. "You are my partner in every way that matters. You have proven courage, intelligence, and loyalty beyond what I expected, and you have earned my trust." Leora's heart trembled. Trust from Kaelin, the Alpha King, a man whose very life had been built on control and vigilance, was more than she could have imagined. She took a step closer, her hands brushing against his. "And you have earned mine," she said softly. I trust you completely." The moment stretched, fragile and beautiful, a bond forged through fire, shadow, and shared danger. Then Kaelin lowered his head, his lips brushing hers in a soft, fleeting kiss. A promise, not of possession, but of mutual respect, admiration, and something far deeper. Even as the moment passed, the castle remained alive with the echoes of the recent danger. Kaelin held her hand, leading her through the halls to ensure the court was secure, their steps silent but confident. Every glance between them carried meaning, every touch a reminder of the bond they had forged under threat and shadow. Later, in the council chamber, Kaelin addressed the court. His voice was steady, filled with authority, yet there was a new softness when he spoke of Leora. "This kingdom has seen threats both visible and hidden," he said. "But today, we are reminded that courage and wisdom are not measured by title alone. The Alpha Queen has shown bravery, loyalty, and intelligence that none can doubt. She stands with me, not as a symbol but as a partner in all matters of this realm." Whispers ran through the council, but none dared contradict him. Leora felt a surge of pride, tempered with humility. She had come into this world as a stranger, desperate and unprepared, and now she was recognized, not only for her courage but for her heart and mind. As the council meeting ended, Kaelin guided her to the palace gardens. The moon hung low, silver and luminous, casting shadows that danced over the enchanted flowers and whispering trees. The garden had become their refuge, a place of quiet reflection, away from the intrigues of the court and the weight of titles. "You have changed," Kaelin said softly, his gaze fixed on her. "Not only in skill but in spirit. You face challenges with clarity, courage, and heart. You have earned your place beside me." "And you," Leora said, meeting his eyes, "have shown me strength, wisdom, and care. I never expected this. I never expected to find trust or anything like this in a place of shadows and power." Kaelin's hand found hers again, and this time there was no hesitation. "It is not easy," he said, "to open one's heart, to allow someone in. But you make it possible." Leora smiled, a mixture of relief, pride, and affection. "Then we face the future together," she said. "Whatever comes, we face it together." He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Together," he echoed. The castle, once a place of fear and challenge, now felt alive with possibility. The shadows that had haunted her steps no longer seemed so threatening, and the corridors no longer whispered only danger. They carried the promise of partnership, trust, and a bond forged in trials and courage. The night deepened, and for the first time, Leora allowed herself to rest completely, knowing that she had survived, grown, and proven herself. Beside her, Kaelin stood vigilant, yet even he seemed lighter, the tension in his shoulders eased by the shared understanding between them. Days passed, and the court adapted to the presence of the new queen. Whispers faded into respect, and Leora's sharp mind and keen observations earned her admiration. Yet she never forgot the lessons of the shadows: trust cautiously, observe constantly, and act decisively. Even Kaelin, who had been so untouchable, began to change. He smiled more often, sought her counsel, and revealed glimpses of the man behind the crown, a man capable of laughter, care, and deep, abiding respect. Their bond, built in the crucible of danger and intrigue, grew stronger with every shared glance, every silent understanding, every challenge they faced side by side. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of gold and crimson, Kalen led Leora to the highest tower of the castle. The city sprawled below, alive with lights and life, but here, above it all, there was only stillness. "You have brought light to shadows I thought unchangeable," Kalen said softly, his hand brushing against hers. "And in return I offer you my promise. Not as a king, but as a man who trusts and respects you completely." Leora's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "And I offer mine," she whispered, "not as a wife out of necessity, but as a partner in every sense. I trust you, Kalen, with all that I am." For a long moment they stood together, hand in hand, gazing out over the kingdom they now shared. The wind whispered through the towers, carrying with it the promise of hope, love, and a future forged in courage, trust, and unyielding partnership. The trials of the court, the shadows that had sought to manipulate and deceive, and the dangers of the kingdom itself had been faced and overcome. And in their place, something far more enduring had emerged, a bond of trust, respect, and the beginnings of love, strong enough to weather any storm the world could cast upon them. As night fell fully over the city, the castle stood serene, yet alive with silent energy. Leora and Kalen, side by side, had not only survived, they had thrived, transformed by courage, loyalty, and the understanding that true power lay not only in the crown, but in the heart and the trust shared between two people who chose to face the world together. Cliffhanger for the future. Beyond the horizon, the first hints of new challenges shimmered, shadows from old rivalries, whispers of ancient curses, and unseen forces moving in the dark. Yet Leora and Kalen faced it all, hand in hand, stronger together, ready to meet whatever destiny awaited them.